everybody. Welcome to the Big Igloo Podcast.
What's up? What's up?
Right here with the co-host, John.
You know the drill. Theology Thursday.
Theology Thursday. Smart theology, dumb dad jokes.
Dumb dad jokes provided by Chris File.
We might not be handling or putting enough dad jokes in this yet so far, but our promise to you is that we will work those in there somewhere, all right?
When he says we, he fully means himself, because I'm not good at those.
They're coming for you, John. One day, it just happens. You wake up. It's like I turned 40 this year, you know, and and all of a sudden there's body aches and there's all sorts of issues.
I'm already experiencing this.
Oh, yeah?
22.
20? Oh, 20. Oh, you're way too young.
I know.
What's going on?
I don't know, man. Maybe I need to just eat more greens.
Eat more greens.
My parents used to make me eat it. Therefore, I've decided to go on a...
Yeah.
What's it called? I don't know. I just don't eat them anymore. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Just don't eat them
Just kidding.
I had way too many. So.
I just eat a plate of meat.
Yep.
And that's it.
The carnivore diet.
Carnivore diet, yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, here's what we're going to do. John, why don't we just kind of recap where we've been so far? We're talking about the greatest sermon ever.
Yes.
And so we've covered a few things. Put it into your own words, John. Where have we been?
So we started out with the Beatitudes.
Yeah.
And originally we had, or when I read the text at least, I've always just kind of read them as separate things almost.
Yeah.
And we've kind of learned that wasn't the intention of Matthew. His intention was to make it as a progression and kind of start out where every good leader does, I believe, is humility.
Yeah.
Just understanding that you're not
the poor in spirit.
Yeah, exactly. The poor in spirit. And just kind of working your way through roller coasters of life, and then things start picking up. But at the end, he drops some bombs on you again.
Right.
And so just the whole humility aspect and the progression of the Beatitudes is
absolutely
enlightening.
And something else too. I mean, I think Matthew's also setting us up. He's setting us up to, Jesus is like, all right, hey, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the meek, blessed are the peacemakers and stuff. And it should make us sit there and go, well, who is this?
Right.
Because I think about my life, I might embody some of those things. Ideally, I want to be those things. But I think Matthew, again, this is towards the beginning of his gospel. He's pointing us towards, hey, this guy who's delivering this message is these things. Right. And so if you're reading the book of Matthew, it's so easy to divide our chapters and divide our verses and to look at things and see them isolated, but we need to see the entire story. We need to see, wait a minute, who is somebody who is poor in spirit and all that? And if you didn't check out that episode, go listen to it, because we talk about how Jesus really is the fulfillment of that. Now, last time we talked about...
salt. I'm just kidding. Light.
We did.
Well, salt and light,
we did talk about salt and light,
not losing your saltiness and being a light that can't be hidden.
Yeah.
And I think it's really just... kind of a setup for what he's going to be talking about next. Yeah. Which is the big three. Money, sex, power.
Money, sex, power. And we also talked about the shopping cart. We're going to peel back to the shopping cart.
Great analogy.
Thanks to Mr. Riley Ross.
Yes, shout out Riley Ross.
And the shopping cart where, if you've ever parked somewhere at a shopping mall and it's like someone just leaves the cart there.
Yes.
They just leave it. I mean, there's really no way around this.
No.
If you've left the shopping cart and not taken it where it's supposed to be, there's at least some amount of selfishness there.
No, there's something that we did that episode that happened to me the day of, and I about got up and threw that shopping cart across the parking lot.
So I was at here's another one for you. I was at the gym yesterday, and I walk in and I wanted to kind of use kind of the freeway area where there was a deadlifts. I wanted to do deadlifts, right? And there was already a guy over there using the thing and all that. So okay, that's fine. I'll go to the other side where I can do squats and stuff. And so anyway, but wanted to work back and go over and hit deadlifts. And this guy leaves the bar loaded, and I see him go get his jacket and just leave.
Oh man,
John, when someone leaves,
it's messed up.
The weights fully racked, didn't put their weights away. That's a shopping cart, Yeah,
that's absolutely a shopping cart. So kind of one of those things where, I love my mom to death. People always ask me why I'm so direct.
Yeah.
And so, straight up talking. Yeah. And my parents are to blame for that.
Well, yeah.
But it's one of those things where, she would always point her fingers on things that I do wrong, and it made me uncomfortable because she was right. And I knew there's nothing I could say about it, but she had no problem, oh, well, remember when you did this? Or how about this? And just put it right on that nerve.
Well, so that's perfect, because we got Jesus. Eileen's got a little bit of Jesus in her.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Jesus is doing here in the best sermon ever. He's coming along and he's like, I'm going to mess with you here. So why don't we just jump into the text? And by the way, John, some of these, some of these I've prepared some stuff, and then some of these I've just thought, hey, we're just going to be kind of organic here. So if you got your Bible, you can follow along with us. We're going to jump in right here talking about Christ came here to fulfill the law. We're going to talk about him fulfilling the law, anger and lust. That'll be this episode. And then next time we're gonna jump to the hot topic of divorce. So yeah, that's gonna be loaded. So here we go. Christ came to fulfill the law. So chapter 5, verse 17, it says this: do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota nor a dot will pass away from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, there's a lot there.
Yeah, there is.
So yeah, first glance, what are you thinking there?
My first glance and first thought process went straight to I feel like this Christianity has kind of had a movement of softness, if I want to make this. They really think that because he is all loving and all powerful and all just, that that it doesn't really matter what we do, that we can do what we want, yet at the end of the day we're still And so I think just right there, he's saying it out. It's like, don't think that you're favored in that eyes of the kingdom. Yeah. When you set aside your morals and stuff like that, and expect to be. So yeah, that's the first thing that really hit me just right off. That was the first thing I thought of when he said, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. Yeah.
Now here's the deal. I want to be very clear here, and because this is one of these things where we can really get into maybe a motive. You're right. There's legalism, but there's also the opposite, and this is a really big $10 word. Antinomianism. Nomos means law. So if you think anti-law, so you can either get legalistic where everything's about the law and my ability to keep things, or you can go clear on the other side, the other ditch, which is anti-law.
Which are both spiritually dead practices.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. If you fall into legalism, if you think, and so what Jesus cannot mean, and we have to let all of Scripture interpret Scripture, what Jesus cannot mean is that we somehow have the ability to fulfill the law and earn our righteousness.
Right.
That would be legalism, to sit there and say, I've done it, check, check, check. In fact, we're going to see this in a second, because he's actually going to talk about anger and lust, which none of us, if we follow the criteria of Jesus, we've not fulfilled the law.
Right.
But it's also a setup. This is a setup.
He's known for that.
Yeah, Jesus is setting us up because he says this. He says, unless your righteousness surpasses, the Pharisees, you'll not inherit the kingdom of heaven. Well, get into the mind of a first century Jewish person. In fact, we don't even have to really go that far. Right. Think about this. Would you say, John, that the natural tendency of people is to think, oh, my pastor's more holy than I am?
No.
You don't think so?
Well, yes, absolutely.
I think the general population would sit there and say, well, yeah, because they kind of go to this behavior mentality, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I think most people would sit there and say, well, no, he's a spirit, or he or she, they're a spiritual leader. They're closer to Jesus. God hears their prayers more.
Right.
I'm not saying that's the overall culture of our church, or that we definitely don't teach that, but I think there's something in the human heart that tends to see, we take the spiritual class people, and put them on a pedestal. And really, so Jesus, again, he sets them up. He's like, hey, unless you're righteous, he's talking to common people. It's like today would be saying, hey, unless you're better than your pastor or the Bible scholars you're not coming to the kingdom of heaven.
Right.
There would be a way in which I think even the general population today would sit there and go, whoa, what do you mean? Right? Yeah. And so back then for them, because these were the teachers of the law. These were the esteemed, these were the professors and the godly people and, the spiritual professionals of the day.
Yes.
And so imagine the average person sitting there hearing Jesus go, better than a Pharisee, but they have the entire Old Testament memorized. They're the ones who tell me what to do. Right. They're the ones who tell me what it means to practice my faith. And in some ways today, pastors, I mean, we do have maybe an extra level of knowledge above, a lay person, maybe.
Right. Hopefully.
Hopefully. Right. I mean, God has given teachers and stuff. But again, it's this kind of setup because Jesus is about ready to challenge this notion. Because it's going to bring us to that place of being poor in spirit. Right. Like, what? I could be better than Rabbi such and such. Again, it's a setup here, right?
Right.
But what's interesting is he says, do not think, now here's the key, I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not, but to fulfill them. In other words, Jesus is saying, I've actually come to complete. I've come to bring completion to this.
Right.
And so our minds, if we understand the rest of the New Testament and what Paul talks about justification in Romans, what Jesus is making this case is, I am the fulfillment of the law.
Right.
And one of the great errors that I see in the Protestant church, especially evangelicalism, whatever, is we tend to look negatively on the law of God. And I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding.
Right.
If you don't understand the law's purpose, there's a way in which sometimes we see the law as bad, which is why we kind of like, it's not about rules, it's about relationship. Well, it is about relationship.
Right.
But here's the deal. We have to understand things through the lens of relationship first. Right. It's just like my kids are my kids, right?
Absolutely.
But there are rules of the house.
Yeah.
Like, it matters how they treat each other.
Exactly.
And when you understand God through this lens of like, yeah, you're my child, but let me tell you what it means to be a part of our family.
Right.
You don't obey the rules to become part of the family. No, that's grace.
Right.
No, grace means, and here's the deal. We understand Jesus has kept the law for us. Justification comes because of what Jesus did for us.
Right.
But living out in this connection with Jesus then is this process of sanctification. And so there's a way in which justification comes to me by grace, but there's a way in which sanctification, it's me learning how to walk out. What does it mean to be a Christian?
Right.
What does it mean to be Christ-like? Right. Well, it's the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah.
It's loving. It's justice. It's all of these things, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, maybe you want to speak to that a second. What has your impression growing up of the law?
I think it very much matters how people hear it.
Absolutely.
Because the laws are written, out of love. And when you kind of have this legalism mind, sometimes it's easy to get in this condemnation seat as a person. Yeah. It's one thing to be condemned.
Or by comparison.
God. Yeah.
Or even comparison.
Absolutely.
I'm doing better at this than you are. I'm more giving. I'm more whatever.
And so just when people take that high seat in that place of, you need to do this so you can be more like your mom and I.
Oof.
It kind of,
ouch, man, that hurts as a parent. I'm not saying I've ever done that, but I probably have.
It kind of, it makes you feel like, well, if this is what the law is, then I don't want any part of it. If it's this place of I'm better than you,
right?
Then that makes me a hard time to, because it's one thing, like I said, when God or like Jesus or the Holy Spirit speaking to you, but it's a different thing when another person is, right? And so I think we have to err on the side of caution when you're, that's why legalism is a scary practice, because you kind of sit in that place of, look at me, this is where you need to be, or even worse, they're just as bad, but holding you to a higher standard than themselves.
I came up with this analogy years ago where I was thinking about like the medical field. There's different doctors that practice different forms of medicine, right? You can go to a foot doctor, you can go to an eye doctor, you can go, all sorts of different things. Right. And I was thinking about law and grace in the role. And the thing is like, you cannot view the law as bad. You can misapply or you can misappropriate the law. Again, if you're using it, like you said, to compare or show that I'm better than, that's no, not at all. That's that's using Tylenol to try and cure cancer. No, you can't do that, right? But we do need to see the law in its proper context. And I kind of thought about it this way: if I had Dr. Law and Dr. Grace, okay, and here's Dr. Law. Dr. Law is 100% accurate on diagnosing the patient.
Right.
Always gets the diagnosis wrong. So you just look at the 10 Commandments. Is how you lie, cheat, do you steal, do you honor God, do you love your neighbor? All of these things. Do you have idols in your life, right? And it's like the law. When we look at the law, immediately things come up in our heart of like, ooh, that's where I'm off. That's where the disease is. Yeah. That's the thing that's tripping me up. And but here's the problem: Dr. Law cannot give you a treatment plan.
Right.
Dr. Law can only tell you what's wrong with you.
You're doing wrong.
And if you try to consult Dr. Law to make you better, that's where Paul gets to Romans like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Instead, you need Dr. Grace.
Right.
See, because Dr. Grace is all about the empowerment, all about the forgiveness, all about bringing the justification, applying the justification of what Christ has already done.
Yes.
And so again, Jesus is saying, hey, don't think I've come to abolish the law. I've come to fulfill it. So Jesus is the one who walks out and he embodies both of these things, grace and truth.
Yeah.
He ministers in grace and truth. He embodies both of these things. And if we don't see law and grace and in their proper lanes, we get really confused. And this is an age-old debate. I don't it's not like I'm going to settle it today or whatever, but Christians get tripped up in this area. So I hope, if you're listening, I hope you find this helpful. So let's look at this. Let's look at these two categories, anger and lust. All right. And so Jesus says this, he says, you have heard it was said to those of old, you shall not murder. Whoever murders will be liable to judgment. Excuse me. But I say to you, everyone who is angry with his brother, John, you have a couple brothers.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever violated this one?
Oh, yeah.
Whoever's angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Well, I have a sister, so he says nothing about that, so I'm good. He's liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. Whoever says, you fool. Ever called someone an idiot?
Yeah.
That person with the shopping cart. Man.
And I just want to point out, and I'm reading
you're reading NIV, yeah.
Brother or sister.
Oh, it does say that. Oh, wow.
So
that's why I don't read the NIV. Okay. Whoever says you fool will be liable to the hell of fire. Interesting. So if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift before the altar. Go. First be reconciled to your brother and come offer your gift. Boy, that's really interesting, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost like, sometimes we want to just be spiritual about things and be like, I'll go to church and I'll ask God for forgiveness. If we look at the priority, what Jesus is setting here, it's almost like he's putting this priority of like, almost like the earthly relationship, like, no, go make that right first before you come to church, before you come. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I don't know, just kind of jumped out at me, right? And then coming off your gift, come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge and judge to the guard and you be put in prison. Truly, I say to you, you will never get out unless you have paid the last penny. This says something, boy, we probably talk a whole podcast on this just about forgiveness and reconciliation and how you do these things. John, what was this like for you growing up? Were you ever like if one of your brothers did something, like did your mom or your dad like make you apologize quickly?
Yeah.
Say you're sorry.
Yeah.
Say you're forgiven.
Was it, genuine? Never. Actually, there was one time. I remember I was genuine.
One time you were genuine.
I just like my brother said something. I just headbutted him.
Oh my goodness!
Just blood gushed out of there.
Oh, man.
I felt bad about that one.
It's something that I think what you're talking, what you're kind of tapping into is, and I can say this as a dad. I mean, I've had to do this with my kids of like, no, I think there's something beneficial to practicing that.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And setting that. But I do think we have to tap in as parents and recognize, okay, just because you made them say sorry doesn't mean they actually in their heart were doing it. And so that's a process.
Right.
But here's the thing. In our society today, I think there's so much where we don't confront, we don't keep short, tabs or whatever. We let things build up.
I think that's why his priority was people, because he's there, he's in our corner. Jesus is staying. I think he understands. No, I don't think. I know he understands that, time is just a breeding ground for bitterness for people.
Absolutely.
And so you let people sit on it, they will be bitter about it.
Yeah.
So I think he's just saying, hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not leaving. Your forgiveness is pretty much already there.
Yeah.
But you need to reconcile with these people.
Yeah. I was listening. I heard a clip from Jordan Peterson a couple months ago, and he was just, he worked in the counseling field. And one of the things he said was, he says, bring things into the light quickly. And he was talking about reconciliation between people. And I've seen this play out. I've seen this play out in my own extended family, where there's just bitterness creeps in, and things, we know things are wrong, but nobody says anything. Right. And eggshell issues develop. And it's like, the crazy thing about it is he's talking about anger. They says, but he starts out by talking about murder. You've not murdered,
right?
But you've harbored this in your heart. See, Jesus is making this point that you don't get to the place of murder without first crossing the bridge of hate.
Absolutely, yeah.
So all murder has begun somewhere, and it's this place of hate. And so this gets back to the shopping cart thing, right? Yes. How do you show up? How do you show up? Like that little bit of selfishness can grow into a big tree of selfishness. A little seed of selfishness can turn into something else. And then goes on to lust, all right? He says, you've heard it said, you shall not commit adultery, but I say to you, everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out, throw it away. For better to lose one of your members than your whole body be thrown into hell. I mean, could you make it any more plain? Well, Jesus, what do you mean by that, right? Okay. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it's better that you lose one of your members than your whole body go into hell. Now, again, I think Jesus, we could have a temptation here to soften his words. Did Jesus really mean this? Is he speaking hyperbolically? Is he just kind of like is he going to the most extreme thing to reveal something about our hearts? I think that's the case.
Yeah.
I don't think Jesus is really intending for us to cut off our hands, but I think he's trying to get us. I think he's trying to get us to take this seriously.
Yeah.
Like what are you willing to do to root these things out?
All right. Yeah.
What are you really willing to do to root out anger in your family?
Yeah, absolutely.
Between your brother.
And I find it very interesting that, each of these, he starts out with like the top dog sin in each category.
Right.
And really just sets this place of, we've all been in the first stages of these sins.
Yeah.
Kind of like you said last time.
Yeah.
And what's it called? I think it's just interesting how, kind of like the finger shopping cart. I mean, he's just really putting us all in that first place of the Beatitudes, humility, understanding we're all coming from the same place.
Absolutely. And John, that's so great that you bring it back to that, because you're absolutely right. I think, again, what does the law do? The law, when I look at it, and if I really understand, that's what Jesus is saying. He's saying, you guys are trying to get off on a technicality. You think because you haven't murdered, you're okay. You think because you haven't committed adultery, you're okay. Actually, here's the intent behind the law. Here, he's claiming to be God in the flesh. So he's basically saying that, I'm the one who wrote this law. I know what it is.
I'm the law. Yeah.
I'm the law.
I've always wanted to say that.
It's not my parents. I'm the law around here. But, Jesus, he can actually say that.
Yeah.
But so, he's clarifying some things for them, right?
Yeah.
But again, think about, he's brilliant, because he set us up with blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What does he say here? Hey, unless your righteousness exceeds the scribes and Pharisees, you'll never enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, wait a minute. So he's talked about how we get the kingdom is through being poor in spirit. That's, again, if Dr. Law comes in with the diagnosis and says, hey, you're fundamentally, because of sin, there's things flawed in you. Oh man. Yeah, I know. I don't live up to even my own expectations.
Right.
But I don't have to be lost in that despair, because Jesus has already promised me that that's the starting point. Yeah. Because this produces meekness. This produces so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So again, it's really interesting to me that again, we have a tendency, because of the numbers beside verses. Yeah. Ooh, I like that verse. I'm going to take it.
Oh yeah.
Yep. We need to see this as a message. This is a sermon.
Right.
And everything's building on each other. And so the intro of his message are the Beatitudes.
Yeah.
Right. But he's going to start messing with some things.
Yeah.
He's going to start messing with those power systems in our lives, the money, the sex, all of this kind of stuff. And that ability that we have to self-justify.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So anyway, I'm I'm going to have to do a little bit more prep work for this next one, because we're going to talk about divorce, because Jesus has something to say about it. And it's I got some interesting thoughts on it. And it's something as a pastor we always get asked. What about these passages? And hey, this is what you need to know. It was the same thing in Jesus' day. The same, some of the exact same conversations we're having today, they were having 2,000 years ago. And again, every single one of us needs to recognize our ability to self-justify.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Be like, I'm good. Well, are you?
I helped someone the other day.
Yeah, I helped a little old lady cross the street. Absolutely. I put my shopping cart away.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, Jon, you got any, we're going to wrap it up here, but you got any closing thoughts? What do you think about what we've covered today?
I think, again, it's just that whole humility aspect of just understanding that we all come from the same place. We all come from a place that we ultimately need Jesus.
Yeah.
And, you can talk about the law till you're blue in the face. You can try to perform till you're blue in the face. But at the end of the day, we all need Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's coming to that place of just understanding that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like myself, I don't like relying on other people.
Yeah.
But it's okay that I need Jesus.
Yeah.
He's the one that's always there, and he's the one that's going to fulfill me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, do I establish relationship by keeping the law? No way.
Right.
I don't establish it. No way. Relationship was established by grace.
By Dr. Grace.
By absolutely. By Jesus coming in. So justification comes from his grace.
Yeah.
However, through relationship, I'm living out what it means to be like Christ.
Absolutely.
And to be like Christ means I do look at these things and I do understand, wow, it's not just about blowing up and killing somebody, getting angry and killing somebody. It's really about the attitudes that I harvest in my heart. It's not about, well, hey, I'm faithful to my wife and I've never slept with anybody else. But what about the second and third glance at the woman at the store? Or, what? It's like, those are things that matter. It doesn't matter because again, there's something about back to the big three.
Right.
Even if I'm just lustfully looking at a woman, I'm using them for my own benefit, for my own gratification. Someone who I'm not married to, which is actually dishonoring to my wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we live in a culture, it's funny. I was just, I was just reading this. There was a lady who put out a TikTok video about her and her husband's marriage rules. And she was speaking from a Christian point of view, and everybody went crazy because they basically, one of the things is they don't allow each other to look at pornography. Wow, how controversial.
Yeah.
But we're living in a world where something like that is, to have a rule.
Yeah.
It's not, and it's crazy. And yeah, we just live in a crazy world. But again, justification doesn't come through me keeping the law. No, Jesus kept the law.
What's an interesting story? I actually preached this a couple weeks ago. It's kind of this balance between law and relationship.
Yeah.
And I talked about, I've only seen my dad cry a few times in his life. And one of the times I just got done with soccer. We lost semifinals my senior year. Just got done. I was a wreck because I wanted to play college soccer. God took me a different path. Long story short, I was crying a lot because I was not ready to be done with soccer. I went up to my dad and I just saw him start welling up. And I was like, what's wrong? I asked him why, because I'm not used to seeing him crying.
Yeah.
And he said, I remember when you first started. And he said, you didn't step on the field. You were chasing butterflies. You were doing everything that was wrong, but I was still proud of you.
Wow.
And it's just it was the whole aspect of we might not be doing it right, but we're trying.
Yeah.
We're out there. We're participating. And for that, Jesus is still proud of us.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, it's just a distinction I just made in my head. But
no, that's good, because we do need to rest in the love of a father.
Absolutely.
God is a father, and he does love us.
And the point of that story is, even though I was bad when I first started, even though I was chasing butterflies, I was still going out and participating. And even though I fell short a lot of times and was not even in the game, he was still proud of me.
Yeah.
But
not to ruin this beautiful moment, but I actually, I took a picture of a butterfly that landed on poop. I made a meme out of it. So
Kris has it. We need a whole episode where Kris just shows memes.
Just memes. But I was like,
meme originals.
I said, when life comes at you like a pile, try and find the butterfly. So
The dad joke's coming in.
We got to bring the dad joke game up. All right, we said that at the beginning. All right,
good point.
Well, hey, that's it for this week, and thanks for joining Theology Thursdays, part of the Big Igloo podcast.
Smash
the like button,
subscribe.
Yep, all that good stuff.
All the above.
And when we say subscribe, it's free. Okay,
that's right.
Anyway, catch you later.